Kevin Campbell, aka Yah'kel, the mighty Hebrew Lion of Judah. This is the Campaign for Biblical Literacy Ministries and No More Lies. Today's video is going to be, who are God's chosen people today? Okay, the question is, who are the Israelites today? I'm going to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt exactly who the Israelites are today. But the first point that I want to bring out is a very important point in the history of the nation of Israel. Around 930 BC, after the death of King Solomon, the nation of Israel split into two separate kingdoms and two separate nations. I'm going to repeat this, a very important point. Around 930 BC, after the death of King Solomon, the nation of Israel split into two separate kingdoms. You had the kingdom of Israel in the north, which consisted of the 10 tribes, and you had the kingdom of Judah in the south, which only consisted of 2 tribes, which were Judah and Benjamin. Now, if you want scripture references according to that, you can go to 1 Kings 12, but I'm not going to go there right now. But that's a very important point. So, let's fast forward. During the time of Christ, in the land of Israel, you only had the southern kingdom, or the kingdom of Judah, which consisted only of the 2 tribes of Judah and Benjamin. It's a very important point. You only had those 2 tribes in the nation of Israel during the time of Christ. The other 10 tribes, or the northern tribes, were scattered throughout the 4 corners of the earth. It's a very important point. Okay, so now, let's continue. Around 40 years after the death, burial, and resurrection of Christ, Jerusalem was conquered by the Romans. The year was 70 AD. Jerusalem was then conquered by the Roman army. Let's get this in the scripture, because Christ foretold this in the scripture. So we're going to go to Luke 21. We're going to start here in verse 20. And it reads, "And when ye shall see Jerusalem compassed with armies, then know that the desolation thereof is nigh." Verse 21. "Then let them which are in Judea flee to the mountains, and let them which are in the midst of it depart out. And let not them that are in the countries enter thereinto. For these days be the days of vengeance, that all things which are written may be fulfilled." Verse 23. "But woe unto them that are with child, and to them that give suck in those days. For there shall be great distress in the land, and wrath upon this people." Verse 24. "And they shall fall by the edge of the sword, and shall be led away captive into all nations. And Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled." This is a prophecy that Christ made during the time he walked the streets of Jerusalem. He told the people of Jerusalem that Jerusalem will fall by the edge of the sword, and those that were in Jerusalem would be led away captive into all nations, and that Jerusalem will be trodden down of the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles being fulfilled. So right now you have Jerusalem being trod down by the Gentiles. The people who are in Jerusalem right now are Gentiles, because this is not the end, according to Luke 21:24. Now, so once again, 70 AD, Jerusalem was conquered by the Romans. During the time of Christ in the land of Jerusalem, there was only the 2 tribes, which consisted of the kingdom of Judah, which were the southern tribes, which was Judah and Benjamin. Now the question is, what happened to the Israelites when Jerusalem was conquered? Where did they go? Okay, here's a book by Rudolph R. Winsler. It's called From Babylon to Timbuktu. Let's see exactly what happened to the Jews once they were conquered by the Romans. Where did they go? I'm going to read in this book on page 84. Page 84. We're going to read the second paragraph, and it starts like this. In the year 65 BC, the Roman armies under General Pompey captured Jerusalem. In 70 AD, General Vespasian and his son Titus put an end to the Jewish state with great slaughter. During the period of the military governors of Palestine, many outrages and atrocities were committed against the residue of the people. During the period from Pompey to Julius, it has been estimated that over 1 million Jews fled into Africa, fleeing from Roman persecution and slavery. The slave markets were full of black Jewish slaves. There you go. That's exactly what happened when they were conquered by the Romans. The Jews fled into Africa and were put into slavery. Let's get some more proof of that. Okay, here we have a map around the 1700s during the time of the transatlantic slave trade. So, let's take a look at this map. Up here, it says Negro Land and Guinea, with the European settlements explaining what belongs to England, Holland, and Denmark. So once again, this map is around the 1700s, and notice this area here called Negro Land. This is a certain portion of West Africa. My question is, why do you think that they call this particular area here Negro Land? It's a good question. Why would they call it Negro Land? Because it refers to a specific group of people, and I'm going to prove that. Why didn't they call the whole continent of Africa Negro Land? Because all Africans are not Negroes. Notice the specific area or specific portion of West Africa is called Negro Land, right above Guinea. Also, I want you to notice down here where it says Guinea. On the left, hopefully you can see this. It says Grain Coast. Right here, it's called Gold Coast. And right here, next to the Gold Coast to the right, it's called the Slave Coast. And I'm going to blow this portion of the map up next. But if you can't see it here, you'll be able to see it and then shortly when I blow this up. Right underneath the Slave Coast, it tells you who they had enslaved. It says Judah or Judah. So this was called the Judah Slave Coast, which describes exactly the people that they had or were enslaving in this part of Africa. Once again, Negro Land. That term Negro is a specific term given only to the Jews, only to the sons of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. They're the ones that are called Negroes. Let's look at another map. Okay, once again, here we go. To the left, we have the Gold Coast, and to the right, we have the Slave Coast. This map is just blown up. It's the same map from before, but to the left, we have the Gold Coast, to the right, the Slave Coast. Now, look what it says in this area of the map. It says Judah or Wida, which is another spelling for Judah, Slave Coast. Wida, Judah. So this was the Judah Slave Coast, letting you know exactly who they had enslaved in this area of West Africa. So once again, during the time of Christ, we had the kingdom of Judah only. When Rome conquered Jerusalem, they fled into West Africa, which is why they called this the Judah Slave Coast. Now I'm going to show you something else. I'm going to actually show you the fort in West Africa called Fort Judah, where they had the slaves at. This is a slave fort called Fort Judah, letting you know exactly who they had enslaved here. It was in that same part of West Africa, and once again it was called Fort Judah, letting you know exactly who was enslaved here. Now this is where the Israelites were held right before they were gathered up and sold to your friendly neighborhood Caucasians. Before the colonizers came over and took them, this is where they were held. Okay, we were brought over here from Fort Judah on cargo slave ships and sold to our enemies according to the scripture. So now let's just take a look at the document that they use to advertise our sale. It says, to be sold on Thursday, the 3rd day of August, a cargo of 94 prime, healthy Negroes. Look at the terminology. Once again, we were specifically called Negroes. Just like the map was called Negro land. That's a specific term they used for the Jews. For the sons of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the Israelites were called Negroes. Now, we were called Negroes when we first came here. Then, during the 1960s, they changed it and started calling us colored. Now, what's the term they use today? African American. Okay, here is another reference source that's going to tell us that these Negroes are a special group of people. Here we have the Zondervan Compact Bible Dictionary. We're going to go to page 213 and read the definition for one of Noah's sons, who is called Ham. By the way, Noah had 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. The Israelites come from the line of Shem. You had Shem, and then further down the line was born Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Jacob's name was changed to Israel. So the Israelites come from Noah's son, Shem. Japheth was the father of the Gentiles. But let's see what this Compact Bible Dictionary says about Noah's son, Ham. Here we have it on page 213, and it reads, Ham, the youngest son of Noah, born probably about 96 years before the flood, and one of the 8 persons to live through the flood. He became the progenitor. The progenitor just means the father. He became the progenitor of the dark races, not the Negroes, but the Egyptians, the Ethiopians, Libyans, and Canaanites. I'm going to read that again, especially the last part. Did you notice that it said, he became the progenitor of the dark races, not the Negroes, because the Negroes are a special group of people that do not come from Ham. They come from Shem. So once again, even this reference is distinguishing that these Negroes are a separate and distinct group of people. These Negroes are the Israelites. They are the sons of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Okay, now let's go to the scriptures and see what the scriptures have to say about us being brought over here on cargo slave ships. Let me give you a precept first. Let's go to Exodus chapter 20 and verse 2, and this is the precept, and it reads, I am the Lord thy God, which have brought thee out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. So here we see in this verse of scripture, it's referring to Egypt as the house of bondage or as the house of slavery. I'll read it again. I am the Lord thy God, which have brought thee out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. So we know that Egypt is referred to as the house of bondage. Now, let's go to Deuteronomy chapter 28, and let's scroll down to verse 68. And it reads, And the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships. Stop. And we know from the precept, we know from Exodus 22, Egypt is referred to as the house of bondage or as slavery. So we can read it and say, And the Lord shall bring thee into slavery again, or into the house of bondage again with ships, by the way whereof I spoke unto thee. Thou shalt see it no more again. And there, where is there? In America, you shall be sold unto your enemies. They are not your friends, they are your enemies. You will be sold for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you. When it says no man shall buy you, it means no man shall redeem you or be able to save you out of that condition. Once again, Deuteronomy 28, verse 68. And the Lord shall bring thee into slavery again with ships, by the way whereof I spoke unto thee. Thou shalt see it no more again. And there, where in the Americas ye shall be sold unto your enemies, not your friends, for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you or shall be able to redeem you out of that condition. So, here we have it. Who are the Israelites today? They are your so-called Negroes, your so-called colored people, your so-called today African Americans. If you like this video, if it's been a blessing to you, like it, share it, subscribe to my channel. Go to my website, www.campaignforbiblicalliteracy.com. And until the next time, this is the Campaign for Biblical Literacy Ministries, and no more lies. Shalom.